With the conclusion of the Edmonton Oilers season in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, we talk about the season that was and the offseason that will be here in Oil Country on this edition of the panel presented by Sportsnet. Please be joined by a pair of voices of the Edmonton Oilers, Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer. And Bob, yesterday we heard from some players, including the two leaders on this team, both disappointed and emotional. Of course, I'm talking about Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid.
Well, it's pretty clear what the expectation and where the Oilers want to get to. I mean, at this stage, it's about winning one thing, and that's Stanley Cups. And in case of Connor, who's going to win another Hart Trophy this year, and Leon, who's won the Hart, they've got the personal accolades, and it's about team success. And I don't think any of us should be surprised. Obviously, they reinforced the fact that they wanted to win here in Edmonton, and I think that bodes well for maybe where things are going to be long term. So it's going to be incumbent upon. Look, it was a disappointing conclusion to the season. There's things obviously the organization needs to work on. There's some guys that had a tough series against Vegas, but the reality is Edmonton had a 50-win year. Had a great second half, grew and evolved, especially after they picked up Mattias Ekholm. But there's still some unfinished business here.
And Jack, we can't discount the specialty of this Oilers season, of course. A lot of personal milestones along the way. Connor McDavid breaks the 150-point barrier for the first time in his career. Leon Draisaitl with the highest point total in the post-salary cap era by someone not named Connor McDavid. Of course, career highs for Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who also reached the century mark for the first time in his career. The coming out party of Evan Bouchard and Stuart Skinner, and of course the addition of Mattias Ekholm.
Well, I think, for people who want to label this season a failure, they'd be wise to remember that the other teams want to win too. I mean, that's the one thing is, and I think even I was guilty of it. Perhaps Bob was, although Bob seems to see series in a certain way that, all comes out in the wash. But I picked Edmonton to win this series, and I picked Edmonton to win because they had success head-to-head against Vegas, and particularly so in the regular season. But the Golden Knights weren't that healthy all year, and they're still not fully healthy. I mean, they've still, are basically operating with, if you include Robin Lehner, their organization's fourth-string goaltender, and they're rolling along. They must be a pretty good team, in other words. I mean, this was a team that had the fourth-best record of the NHL. It was the two best teams in the Western Conference meeting in the second round, and before anyone goes there, I have no problem with the playoff format. The other team wants to win, too. And you know what? Only 3 times in the history of the league has a team given up the first goal in all 6 games of a 6-game series and won the series. And Vegas has done it twice. So, I mean, they must know how to win, right? They did it against Colorado. Edmonton, again, led in all 6 games of the series. I'm not just talking about the first goal. I'm talking about any game. Edmonton had the lead in all 6 games, and Vegas won the series. And they've done it twice in 3 years, once against Colorado, once against Edmonton. So for me, the loss in the playoffs was to a quality team. Edmonton lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion last year. And right now, I think a lot of people would not be surprised if the Oilers lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion this year. They've got nothing to be ashamed of. Most prolific offensive campaign we've seen since 95-96 from an individual standpoint. And from a team standpoint, it was the best regular season the Edmonton Oilers have had since 1987.
All right, Bob, on that note, what is the priority for Ken Holland and the Oilers in this upcoming offseason?
Well, Jack alluded to it. And he's right, Vegas, we're a good team. They were an experienced team. They know how to win. And teams that know how to win know how to defend. And the Oilers did have, the 6 in each of the games. They had leads. And the Oilers got to do a better job defending. The last 2 years, Edmonton's been 17th and 18th in goals against. They got to find a way to get in the top 10 because we know they can score. And in fairness, one of the things that worked against the Oilers, and I know that both Evander Kane and Zach Hyman downplayed their injuries, but they weren't quite at the same level they were last year where those 2 combined for 24 goals as support scorers. But for me, the biggest thing that has to happen is the club needs to find a way to shave goals against down. So that should be the priority. I think you'll see a shift on defense. I think you'll see maybe a couple changes up front, maybe even one in the top 6 or the top 9. But I think the biggest issue is going to be finding a way to improve the team defense.
And Jack, it will have to be money in money out for Ken Holland in this offseason as well.
It will. And again, I mean, Edmonton's, got a deep hockey club. We talked about the fact that by the time the regular season closed, they had, a double-digit goal scorer in all 12 forward spots. Having said that, again, in a 6-game series where Edmonton led all 6 times, Vegas had 11 forwards score. The Oilers had 8. I mean, there's subtle differences. Defending, sure, but also depth, which won Edmonton the LA series, especially in games 5 and 6, when Edmonton's depth rose to the fore. Costin had 2 goals in the clincher, and Kyler Yamamoto had the game winner in the clincher. That needs to be there in all 4 best-of-7 series. There's a reason they call it the hardest trophy to win in major professional sports. And if you think about the past 5 Stanley Cup champions, Colorado, obviously Tampa, St. Louis, Washington, they've all had numerous kicks at the can. Edmonton, by that standard, 4 years in a row, they're still relatively newbies. I mean, they're starting to get into the mix where it's 5, 6, 7 chances for this core 4, but they've still got a lot of tread left on the tire. It doesn't come easy. It won't next year either, no matter what they do in the offseason.
As Connor McDavid said on Tuesday, in that locker room, it's Stanley Cup or bust. Can't wait for September already. And on that note, thank you, Oil Country, for tuning in on another season of the panel presented by Sportsnet. And hey, congratulations, Jack and Bob, on another outstanding year in the broadcast booth.